Starmer has got to play it very, very clever, which is what he is doing. I don't believe that he is what he's making himself out to be. I think that he's actually quite progressive, and that when
what do you mean when you say progressive? Because it means different things to different people.
I think he's got the ability to demonstrate inclusivity to everybody instead of dividing. To basically, this whole country needs to be flushed. It needs
of
to be
what?
Of all the nastiness, the poison, the toxicity, this malignant aura that seems to be surrounding us, and it comes down to we either have another 5 years of this where it's going to get even worse, or it stops. And I think Starmer has got to play it very clever because, and this is where my hope comes in.
Well, this is where I think hope is really important because, and on that subject of the poison you think needs to be flushed out, Simon, and I promise I'll come back to where your hope, I'm desperate to hear where your hope comes from in case I can steal a bit of it. I was really upset yesterday to hear Robert Jenrick, who presents himself as Mr. Nice Guy. I've got a Ukrainian family living with me. And he said in open parliament that our system, our asylum system, not our immigration system, our asylum system should be suffused with deterrence. He said that openly in Parliament.
I think they're pandering to this. What's the word? They think that we want to hear all this. I don't think that they believe half of it, but they're the ones in power.
All the more shameful for saying it then.
It's disgusting. I mean, it is. What has happened to this country in the last few years is disgusting.
It is.
And I think Starmer, this is going to sound weird, right? But I'm hoping, here's my hope, that Starmer is a liar. I'm hoping and praying.
What do you mean?
I'm hoping and praying that he's just playing the game to get to power, because he can't do anything unless he's in power.
Absolutely.
And I think that he has got to pander to all bases, and that includes the hard of thinking, and there's a lot of that in this country. There's so much of that in this country. Get to power, and then he can start to put things right, and that's my hope. If he was to come out and do a Corbyn, okay, he would gain some support, and everybody wants their sweeties, but there'll be a lot of people, too many people, that think, hang on a minute, you can't do all that, you're going to ruin the country. I mean, look at it. Look at where we are. Look at what they've done. How can Labour do any worse? That's what you've got to ask yourself. And I think that he's playing. I'm praying and hoping that he's lying. He's got people like me in his corner. We can sort of.
Lying's not a great word, though, is it? I mean, by lying, do you mean just? Well, maybe you mean lying, but what? Holding back, not quite saying what he plans to do in case he frightens certain horses.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and making himself out to be this all things to all men kind of guy who's going to garner. Look, I say it again. He needs to get the harder thinking on side, and then once he's done that, he can then say, right, now off you go. If you don't support me now, that's your loss, and start to rebuild this country.
So your hope is he's hiding some of the Labour's light under a bushel, and we'll see it if they win.
Yes.
Okay.
But he has to win in order for us to see it. It can't be any worse than it is now, and God knows we don't want another 5 years of this. Oh, God, please.
Yeah. No, we do not.
It's awful. It's a horrible, horrible... When you look at this and hear the things that these Tories are saying and doing, look at our public services. And the trouble is that's all tinged with their ideology.
But we need to focus on the other parties as well. And I think, we are talking about our political class here, but I also think we as individuals need, that poison that Simon so brilliantly describes, brilliant is probably the wrong word, but so grimly describes, that's infected our country over the last few years. I think all of us have a responsibility to add something better than that to the mix, and in all kinds of ways. There was a lovely piece on the BBC News this morning about an elderly gentleman, a widower, who's just been given an award for voluntary work that he does with children. And and he talks about the joy he gets from the children and how they nominated him for the award, but he said they have no idea how much they sustain him, and that's Britain, isn't it? That's hugely what this country is about, and not just this country. Lots of countries have examples of that. But we have an incredible voluntary sector in this country, incredible, deep, really deep-rooted, deep-seated in every single community across this country. So that's what always gives me hope. And we saw it daily during the pandemic, didn't we? The way people mobilised to help people around them, one way or another. Unlike the government who were throwing parties in Downing Street. But that's where I get some sense of hope from. But I do think we all have responsibility, one way or another, to do what that elderly gentleman is doing, to speak as best we can about our politics, to be honest but not cruel, that kind of thing. I think we all have that responsibility. But what do you want in terms of hope and leadership from our politicians? Where do you have, or do you have any hope in them, any trust in them anymore? Kieran, hello.
Hi, Sheila. How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm more cheerful after speaking to you guys, as ever.
Well, I was going to say I'm not about to lighten the mood. I'm afraid, but but at the same time, so I agreed a lot with what your previous caller said. With the toxic approach to our politics at the moment. I just feel like at the moment there's not a leader who has brought us together, united us. It feels like all the divisive language that is being used at the moment has just put us at war against each other. And, I kind of put it down going way back to sort of Brexit. And I guess there's always been differences in views, but it has, for me, it's really felt like, you're either left or right these days. You can't oppose anything without being labelled something that is an attack. You can't have a centralist view anymore. It seems like that's almost doesn't exist anymore. But I think in that it's because, we don't feel united.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, and we are. I think there are moments when we can feel united. I think, again, barring some individual responses, I think there was a fairly united response to Her Majesty the Queen's death. There was a sense that the country had lost a proper servant of the country. Within the confines of the job she did, that she did it brilliantly and beautifully, and that was a moment, I think, where we felt that. I mean, again, not everybody felt it. I'm not naive enough to think that. But at least we felt something of what our country is about, didn't we?
Yeah, and I think yeah, you're right. There are times where in those sort of, I suppose, the silver linings out of really bad moments, even with COVID, during that times I think together we've found a way to make light of it. But I almost felt we were doing that ourselves,
Yeah, it turns out we were.
And there's not a leader, or at least currently, who has been doing that. And I think a lot of us are kind of, the Conservative Party, they've kind of had enough chances with prime ministers to give us hope. And I think, for me anyway, even though I don't have 100% faith in Keir Starmer, he's kind of our only hope for things to get better.
Well, I don't think he's our only hope if you want a change of government, but I don't think he's our only hope in the country. That's why I talk about all of us, every single one of us who can do something hopeful and active for the people around us. We should, but I hear what you're saying. So your hope politically is in Keir Starmer. Thanks, Kieran.